Hello everyone, ESBR Boxing. You join myself and my co-esteemed colleague Gregory Doyle here to talk about some reactive news that's been breaking. I'm going to pass over to Gregory because he brought it actually to me, and we together are bringing it to you. But we're going to touch on some contentious topics today and a possible super fight, depending on which way you look at it. It might not be a super fight talent-wise, but it'll be a super fight marketing-wise, between two guys down at sort of welterweight division. I'm going to pass over to you, Gregory, now. And just say, Gregory, tell us through what you've seen. Give us a little summary of what's happened, and then we'll dive into it a bit deeper.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Elliot. As always, enjoy your content videos for ESPR. Well, I was away having a look today, as I always do, on my days off. Have a scroll through Twitter, scroll through social media, see what I can find. And my understanding is that Kell Brook versus Conor Benn is imminent. It is going to be on, and there is a few different things that I've seen to suggest that that's definitely the case. One of them being Kell Brook's nutritionist. I think he's nutritionist and possibly his cook as well. Don't quote me on that, but I know he's the nutritionist. Greg Marriott, funnily enough, same name. He has released a video today, and it's him and Kell Brook in a car, and it basically says, "Oh, start of a training camp," something along the lines of that. And then it quickly fires onto a video of Kell Brook approaching an airport with bags. And then the following video is tagged Conor Benn in and says, massive, massive news coming. So I think that's about as legit as it gets. So that's a fight I'm looking forward to, man. I really am.
Well, obviously, we've seen obviously Conor Benn be placed back in WBC rankings recently, not obviously been cleared by the BBOC yet, but obviously he's
Yeah,
looking to fight somewhere, probably won't be in Britain, obviously. Kell Brook has obviously, recently, well, he relatively recently has had some issues, hasn't he, outside the ring, held his hands up
yeah.
to those as well, but saying he was struggling with proposed retirement since obviously beating Emir Khan and any kind of a realization of a sort of career's ambition there. Let's touch on Kell Brook first, Greg. Do you think, is it your opinion that Kell Brook should be fighting, irrespective of whether it's Conor Benn? Do you think that Kell Brook should be fighting again, or that he should stay retired?
It's a tough one, Elliot, because the way that he ended everything with his biggest rival, Amir Khan, it doesn't get much more perfect than that. He's unlikely to win another world title. I believe he should have went up to 154 a few years ago, and he stood a good chance of winning one up there. But money wise, he's going to make a good payday out of this. But for me personally, I think he still get the talent to go on at a certain level. But it all really ended perfect with Amir Khan, didn't it? So I'm a bit mixed about it, but I wouldn't have begrudged him if he stayed retired, if I'm being honest.
Well, let's see, obviously, because Conor Benn has, I suppose, his recent fights has kind of made a bit of a name for himself fighting guys that are perhaps past their best years. I mean, Algieri, because Algieri stands out as one of those guys. But obviously, he's got victories over, Van Heerden, Sammy Vargas, well, to a degree. But then you sit there going, Kell Brook's 36 years old. It's been said that Conor Benn hasn't necessarily had a kind of marquee opponent yet. There's been a lot of marketing behind him, a lot of money behind him. Obviously, would have been the case had he fought Chris Eubank Jr. Do you think that Brook, at this stage of his career, has enough to be a credible challenge to Conor Benn? Obviously, Conor Benn being much younger. And do you foresee a potential chance where Kell Brook could actually spring an upset in the fight were it to happen?
Yeah, it's a difficult question, Elliot, and the reason it is because Conor Benn's a puncher. So anything I say here, it could be obliterated in 30 seconds. But do you know what? I do think so. Yeah, I think Kell Brook's got timing. Timing is so important in boxing. He's always had tremendous timing. If you look at when Liam Smith fought Chris Eubank Jr., that was timing that caught Chris Eubank Jr. And what Liam Smith is, what, 34? He still looked at times good and a bit explosive against Amir Khan, but Amir Khan didn't look very good at all in that fight. So I think it's a credible enough opponent. I think it could be a tricky night. I really do. There's something about this fight. Let's not forget, this is a guy who has got better, but Cedric Pina gave him fits at times. Yes, he's blew guys away like Chris Van Heerden, but they're not Kell Brook. They're not Kell Brook. They don't have the power. They don't have the timing of Kell Brook. They say your last thing to go is your power. Timing wise, I'm not sure. Speed, yeah, but Kell Brook's never been a fighter who's totally relied on speed. It's always been he's got tremendous. If you watch Kell Brook's footwork, Elliot, it's tremendous, and it manages to let him get into certain range to sway back and forward with timing. I can get into this fight. I can get into this fight, and I think you've got to start with Conor Benn off as relatively big favourite, but I don't think it's a foregone conclusion if I'm being honest. If he avoids getting chinned early.
Mate, I'm fully with you. Actually, I'm massively on board with this fight as well. I think Kell Brook could potentially. He's got the talent to spring an upset, and we haven't seen Conor Benn
Yeah.
tested with someone of Kell Brook's talent. It's whether he's kept that, and outside the ring, the issues he's had, and whether he's, like you say, whether he's obviously got that power, but whether he retains that. Obviously, he's had injuries as well, big sort of career-threatening injuries to his eyes, things of that nature. So, just be a question of how that copes, how that stands up. Another opponent I'm going to ask you about, obviously, for Conor Benn, would suggest that he might fight Manny Pacquiao. He's obviously in his early sort of mid-40s now. Am I right in thinking that you would suggest that Kell Brook would be a better challenge, fight style wise, than Manny Pacquiao? Would be a tougher challenge for Conor Benn than Manny Pacquiao, or is there any sort of comparisons or similarities that could be drawn there?
I think there can be similarities that are drawn there, Elliot, because I think the Manny Pacquiao fight is more of a lose-lose situation for Conor Benn because I think he's 44 now. People are going to say, "Oh, that was great that if he beat Manny Pacquiao," but Manny Pacquiao was older, he wasn't the same fighter. They could say the same about Kell Brook, but Kell Brook's been more active lately. He's coming off of that fight with Amir Khan. He stopped him. It wasn't a boring fight that went to points. He put a bit of a job on Amir Khan towards the end, and he's only lost a few times, Kell Brook. I just think Manny Pacquiao is great for the name, and when he retired, he didn't look great against Ugas. He's still able to operate at that level. It wasn't a one-sided beatdown or anything, but in terms of the British public really getting into it, what's at stake, etc., the sparring footage, I think if you're looking after Conor Benn, if you're Eddie Hearn, I think Kell Brook's the route to go down.
No, I agree. Like you say, I mean, Manny was still operating at world level, wasn't he, against you? It's still a title fight that he had, but like you say, I mean, the best years are obviously behind Manny. I'm going to come to you now and say, I mean, let's take. I mean, it's hard obviously to match Conor Benn, obviously with the ongoing sort of issues that are going around licensing. But let's just take a second here to discuss for both people. But we'll start with Kell Brook. Were Kell Brook to win this fight against Conor Benn, where do you see him potentially? Do you see him potentially fighting again? Do you see him potentially staying out for these sort of big marquee names that might still call him out in sort of one-off events? Do you see him putting in maybe trying to put a run together, like you say, up at a different division, try and get a title? How do you see the next sort of year, maybe 2 years, if Brook were to win? How do you see him going? And were he also to lose, would you see him just retiring possibly from that point onwards?
It's a really good question, Elliot. If he loses, I think it's retirement. It can't really be anything else. If he wins, there's certain details we've not got about this fight so far, Elliot. I don't see this being at 147 on the dot. There's no titles at stake. It's never been a lie that Kell Brook struggles to make 147. And I think that Conor Benn will be so supremely confident in winning this fight, I can see it maybe being agreed at 150. If Kell Brook wins, I think he'll fight on, yes. Whether that's at welterweight or not, if I'm advising him, it's got to be 154. I mean, 154 is a tasty division, but 147 is even tastier. So you need to tally up the lesser two evils.
Yeah.
So I could see it being maybe 154 if he continues on. But for me, Elliot, if he loses, it's definitely retirement.
And no, I totally agree with you as well. I mean, obviously, with Kell Brook really struggling to retire, there's a potential. I was always concerned there with fighters that they go on a bit too long and they stay around too long, etc., and get sort of hurt. Conor Benn, let's have a word on Conor Benn. Were Conor Benn to win or lose? I mean, obviously, it's going to be hard to match him, but say he were to win, do you just foresee him maybe fighting some other big names that are also similarly probably had their best years? Or do you see him being thrust potentially into more active fights? Similarly, if he loses, where do you see him going from there?
For me, Elliot is in the hardest division in the world. Welterweight is a very, very tricky division. You almost go from C class fighters to A plus fighters, and you need to find a road in between that. It's very, very difficult. If I'm looking after Conor Benn, I think you've got to step him up, but step him up against someone who he stands a good chance of being competitive and beating with. Like, if he wins this fight, there's no way I'm throwing him in with Errol Spence. Still absolutely no way. But maybe somebody like a Keith Thurman, of the world who is proven, who still would hold a good chance of beating Conor Benn if he was on it on the night, I think that would be a good step up. Someone like him or someone like Kavaliauskas, who's a very, very dangerous fighter and has only lost to the best. I think they've got to be careful what way they manage Conor Benn, because once you're at the top of that division, the Virgil Ortizes, the Terence Crawfords, the Errol Spences of the world, you can only come back down after that. So when you get to that level, you want to be ready to make sure you stay there, and that's so important for me.
No, I agree as well. I think it's actually very tough matching around those divisions, especially with someone like Conor Benn, who, like we say, hasn't necessarily had marquee or sort of that kind of baptism of fire, even very carefully managed. Yeah. And does, like you say, needs to be stepped up, but very carefully stepped up. Greg, I'm going to come to you. Obviously, like the fight hasn't necessarily been confirmed yet. It's not happening. They're not in training camps necessarily yet. We haven't seen any training footage. But I just want to get a word from you on were this fight to happen, say, let's say within the next sort of 2 to 3 months. So Kell Brook's not got to sort of 37, 38. How do you, which way are you leaning at this very, very early stage? Which way are you leaning how the fight goes?
So, with that question, Elliot, it might seem as the outcome that I may be dismissing the fight, and I'm definitely not. It's just, I mean, if I can give you a quick example, if you look at guys like Julian Jackson from the 80s, and I don't know, someone like Mike McCallum. If Julian Jackson went in and sparked Mike McCallum, you're not going to say that Mike McCallum's a terrible fighter. It's just he punches extremely hard. I just think I see Kell Brook starts a little bit slow, and I just think Conor Benn might bang him out early. I think he just hits very hard. I think he's going to be fresh, crisp. But that's not to say that I think he's so much better than Kell Brook, because I don't. It's just styles make fights, the timing of the fight. But what I will tell you, Elliot, is if this goes beyond 4, it's an interesting fight, very interesting fight, because timing outdoes power, timing outdoes everything. And Kell Brook, for me, will still have that. But if you're asking me to put my neck on the line at the moment, I just think Conor Benn might just ice him early, just due to how hard he punches and the way that he comes out.
Yeah, no, to be honest with you, I'm excited actually to hearing you talking about it, and equally, I do kind of think that as well. I think Kell Brook will just step it on him very. No, sorry, Conor Benn will step on him very, very early, and he'll just sort of overwhelm him a bit, like we've seen kind of him do with other opponents as well. Just go straight out and start throwing. And Kell Brook, yeah, how will he be able to withstand that? Again, if it goes past 4 or 5, I'd probably favour Kell Brook, if anything, to sort of pick him up and beat him that way. But what a fight! Yeah, hopefully it will happen. Greg, you've expressed your excitement at the potential of this fight happening. I'm going to express my excitement at the potential of this fight happening as well. Obviously, stay tuned to the channel. Stay tuned to obviously the Twitter feed and other sort of content we've got coming out here. We'll be talking about this and hopefully breaking it as it's an evolving situation that continues to supposed to be in negotiation. We seem to be teased on social media by various members of each person's team, but hopefully it will happen. Whether it happens in Dubai, wherever it happens, hopefully it will happen at a sociable time for us to be able to watch it. Greg, I'd like to thank you for joining me here today. Thank you for bringing the news to my attention, and thus eloquently and in such a detailed way bringing it to people here as well with your thoughts and reflections. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much, guys, for watching. Any last words, Greg, or is that thank you and goodbye from you?
Yeah, it's a thank you and a goodbye from me, Elliot. Always a pleasure to speak to you, my friend, and thank you so much for having me again.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for watching.